Ladies and gentlemen, good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Steve Wilkes, one of the founders of Hope Sheds Light. Anybody here for the first time? Yeah, great. I'm glad you're here. Let me tell you a little bit about Hope Sheds Light. It's a nonprofit that's dedicated to raising awareness about the disease of addiction and providing education and resources to individuals and families in order for them to get better. Okay? We strive to make a healthy community. That's what Hope is about. This is the family meeting, the family support group, because we know that family members get sick along with our loved ones. Right? And the more healthy we become as family members, the greater chance we give our loved ones to get well. That's a fact, by the way. So Hope Sheds Light was started by Ron Rosetto, myself, and Arvo Prima. We have all lost our sons to this disease, and we miss them. But we're here to demonstrate what recovery looks like, regardless of how you're affected by this disease. So we have our speaker here tonight, whom Mark will introduce. We're excited to have him here. After our talk tonight, we're going to break out into groups, which we like to do. And after those groups, by the way, I'd like to reconvene back here for just a few minutes, okay, before we all depart. There's an evaluation that's being sent around to you. We just started that. We'd like you to fill it out after you hear our talk, because we really want to make these family times the most productive they can be, and they can only get there with your input. Okay? So if you need a pen, we'll give you a pen. But thanks for being here. Let me introduce Mark Schottner. Mark is a member of our executive board. He's our wonderful advisor. We're really blessed to have him. Let me introduce Mark.
Thanks. Thanks, Steve. My name is Mark. I'm an alcoholic and drug addict, and I'm also about a 14-year member of Al-Anon now. So kind of a dual winner, as they say. It's good to be here, and thank you for coming. I'm going to introduce an old friend who has been around in the trenches a long time. And he's done kind of every phase of this, working with families, doing interventions, doing counseling. And, he's been very successful in his career. He's the Chief Operating Officer of Summit Behavioral Health, which has a rehab up in Massachusetts. They took over part of the old Union Hospital in Union. We have a Summit Detox there, and I think 5 or 6 outpatient centers here in New Jersey, and also in New York, and also up in Pennsylvania. And his colleague Ed Allen is also here. They left some literature in the back. It's a good place, and when you need a detox, you need a detox. So, without any further ado, Karl.
Hi, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. Families, are the key to everything in this disease. I know that when we I have a partner. We've done probably close to 1,000 interventions. We spend a lot of time with the families prior. Getting them prepped, because typically the dependent person will do what they do. Addiction, although it's painful to watch, is a very predictable cycle with a lot of disagreeable symptoms. I assume everyone is here because of a child, mostly a child, loved one, or. And I also want to make this interactive. Any direction we go, I want you to chime in when you get to something. But the key for me when we're setting up interventions is prepping the family to change the boundaries of the family system. And I think you're here to if everyone in the family doesn't change, do you think the dependent person will change? Has everyone done the same old things and watched the same old results? Does anyone here think themselves an enabler? Show of hands. Joe, what does that mean to you?
It means not doing what needs to be done. It's to, as they say, detach the blow.
Okay.
Very, very hard thing to do.
Anybody else? What are they, how would they define enabling in their life? Okay, well, I brought a handout. Yes, ma'am. Exactly right. You know, in the old days, the alcoholic would pass out in the living room, maybe get sick, the wife would clean them up, put them to bed, call the boss for them, do all these actions. Today, it's, you know, the heroin epidemic in Ocean County and around the country right now is leading to a lot of behaviors where stealing. How many people have had a dependent person steal from their home? How many people have had to change locks on their home? Get a safe to keep your valuables, right? Do you think that's a good thing? Okay. So if we, the definition of enabling is someone does for something for the addicted person that the addicted person should be doing himself or herself. Enabling is a learned behavior, which means it can be unlearned. So in the disease of addiction, when you go to the hospital and you have a sick family member, you bring candy and flowers to that person, it's appropriate. When you bring candy or flowers to a heroin addict, they sell them and buy more drugs. Is that true? So learning the behaviors of creating new boundaries for the family is crucial. If you can turn to page, larger handout. 10 ways family members can help an addicted person. The pain and suffering of addiction is not limited to an alcoholic or drug addict. Family members share a tremendous burden as well. Shame, guilt, fear, worry, anger, and frustration are common. Everybody been through those stages? Everyday feelings from family members concerned about a loved one's drinking and drug use. In most cases, the family has endured the brunt of consequences for the loved one's addiction, including stress, worry, financial costs, and life adjustments. The disease twists love, concern, and a willingness to be helpful into a host of enabling behaviors that only help to perpetuate the illness, right? So what you think you're doing to help is actually making it worse. Has everyone gotten through that? I'm not saying changing that is easy. What we see, let me tell you what we see in our detox. 50% of the people are under 30 years old right now. Will probably be full tonight. They're under 30, and about 80% are opiate addicts, some form of heroin or painkillers. That's what we're seeing on a daily basis. We have a family support group on Thursday nights. Typically, we get about 2 or 3 family members that come out on Thursday night. So I applaud this, but the key is if that doesn't change, this won't change. While the family and friends are busy trying to help the alcoholic, most people have let their own lives go asunder. They've changed their own social life. I had a couple in counseling probably about 5 years ago. The son was a heroin addict. I said, can you go out to dinner tonight and not talk about him for an hour? I asked them how long they lasted. How long do you think they lasted? 10 minutes. They could not do it. Does that sound familiar to people?
It consumes you.
It consumes everything.
It consumes you.
So if you were to change the rules how many people have constructively tried to change the boundaries of the rules in their own home? It's hard, right? It's hard. So here are the top 10 ways. I wrote this with a partner a number of years ago. Top 10 ways you can help an alcoholic or addict. How many people have been to an open AA meeting or a Narcotics Anonymous meeting? Was it a good experience? Did anybody else go to Al-Anon or Nar-Anon simultaneously to coming here? Good. The disease festers in secrets, right? The less you talk about it, the less you talk to others for support, the more you feel ashamed, the more loneliness, you know, the bigger the guilt gets. The disease, most parents feel some form of responsibility for their child's addiction. Is that common? Something you did wrong. Any truth to that whatsoever?
No.
Zero.
Zero.
And that's what you learned in the 12-step meetings, that it's a sick person that needs to get well, not a bad person that needs to get good. Right? Everybody agree with that? Number 2 on here, don't rescue the alcoholic or drug addict. Let the full burden of the consequence. How many people have bailed their children out of jail? I mean, if you're taking them to treatment right out of jail, that might be constructive. How many people have given them money? How many people, you know, consequences drive people into treatment. Ed is here tonight. He's our director of business development for Summit. How many people that are come into our detox are motivated by external factors like families and law enforcement? What do you think the percentage of the people entering tonight is?
Honestly, probably 95%.
Right.
Most people don't go to treatment because their life's going well and they're all of a sudden wake up one day. Usually it's legal reasons, family reasons, someone's going to leave. At least 95%.
95%. I would say almost everyone that enters our detox is being motivated by an external factor. That includes a lot of parents. So a typical parent, out of love and respect, will look to, or out of love and caring, will look to rescue their sick child. In many diseases that'll work. In this disease it will fail. And I think everyone has found that. Number 3, don't support the addiction financially by supporting the alcoholic or drug addict. Money is the drug. Money is the drug. No matter what, how many people have heard the cockamamie stories? I owe this, I borrowed from Jimmy's mother and she's really mad at me and I need $20 to pay her back, right? Money is the lifeblood. If you feel obligated to pay any kind of thing for the dependent person, do it yourself. Do never hand the money to a dependent person. Number 4, don't analyze the addiction, right? It's not your fault. You might as well take responsibility for cancer or other diseases if you're going to take responsibility for this. Don't analyze, you know, why this is happening in your life. It doesn't matter. Leave that to the treatment professionals to figure out if there's co-occurring depression or anything else going on. You know, we'll get to the bottom of that, but don't sit here analyzing. I hear so many families go into the story of, you know, why they think this happened. And psychotherapy is about a look back at the past. Counseling is about the here and now and looking forward, right? The disease is here, it's now, and look at the symptoms that are presenting right now. Analyzing will get you, as they say, analysis by paralysis. The biggest one I see when we do interventions. So when we set up an intervention, we go through the process of how we would do it. Has anyone been through an intervention with their child? Formal? Did you write letters? What did you do?
No, we didn't write letters. We just a professional interventionist that came to the house.
Okay. And did you all speak?
But he spoke to us beforehand to tell us how we should or should not respond to certain things.
Right. So families tell me, right away up front, I'm not kicking my child out. You can't ask them to do that, right? And I don't, right? I don't. I mean, I do word it, I think certain things to change, but one thing I know with addiction, if you say something to an active addict and you don't do it, you've done a lot of damage. So if you can't take a certain action, if you can't kick your child out, if you can't, not pay their phone bill anymore, whatever it is, don't say you're going to do it. And then keep doing the behavior, right? That just enables and prolongs this forever. I don't ask, when I ask parents to describe, let's say we do an intervention, we go through the process, and the child, people are scared. When we get to the end of an intervention, we ask, are you willing to go to treatment? Right? That's a yes or no question. Right? People are so scared of getting to that point. What if they say no? Well, that's a 50-50 chance, right? In many cases, the no is going to be always the first answer, right? But what we talk about in presenting consequences is working with the family up front to be comfortable with what they say next, what they're willing to create in consequences or to support a recovery your child or whoever it is not ready to undertake it. And that's the words, right? What are you willing to do to support a recovery your child's not willing to engage in yet? What are you willing to do? So we don't make idle threats. If you don't mean it, don't say it. We don't say it in treatment. We don't say it in interventions. We don't say it anytime. And how many people have broken those rules? Just about everybody in the room at some point. If you keep doing this, right, until those boundaries firm up, because people with dependencies are some of the most savvy and cunning. They will test all the rules over and over and over. Don't extract promises. Why? Why wouldn't you want to extract promises from He's smiling. What? Why are you smiling?
Like I'm in recovery myself, and I know I couldn't promise myself something, let alone anybody else in my family. Like it didn't matter how much I cared for my mother or something like that. Like I could never make the promise that I'll never use drugs again. You know what I mean? Like while I'm in addiction, especially, I wasn't capable of following through promises to anyone.
Right.
And
you could have
in terms of using.
He could have meant it.
Oh yeah.
He could, there's a difference between denial and lying, right?
Oh yeah.
Were you using today? No, that's a lie. I can quit tomorrow. That's denial, right? Right after the weekend, I won't buy any more dough. And listen, I'm like Mark. I didn't say it up front. I'm in recovery, but I made so many rules for myself and promises I couldn't keep for so long. Right after Arbor Day, right after Labor Day, right after.
It's also kind of the thing where, like, if you expect a promise from an addict, you're setting them up for failure. You know what I mean? Not just you, but to themselves. Like, they could really want to promise you something, and they see how bad you want something to them. So they'll promise you, and then as soon as they can't deliver on the promise, that's another thing for them to beat themselves up over.
Right. And like I said, I believe people coming into detox have a vague desire to get well. They're not just here to scam, get a few days in from the cold. I think there's some part of you that wants to get clean. And then there's we as treatment providers just try to get that desire from 60-40 against to 60-44, right? Because nobody's 100%. This whole thing, you gotta want it. How many think that's true? You think you gotta want it? You think, to some degree, I agree with you. But early on, like in a detox, I don't think they're capable. They're impaired, right? Their brain is hardwired wrong. I think you gotta want it to some degree using new boundaries and new things, want it for them a little bit, forcing the actions, right? Is that true in your life?
Yeah, definitely.
I had a crying mother on my front lawn say, "You're killing me." Now, I have Irish, we were talking about the Irish earlier. I've got Irish Catholic heritage. I'm loaded with guilt. I mean, I was taught guilt from, you know, it's a mortal sin to miss mass. You're going to hell. I was 2 years old and I was screwed. That's true, sorry. But I'm serious. So my mother's sitting on the front lawn of our house and I'm 24 years old, and you can't get recovered early. You know? Her crying, saying, "You're killing me." You know what that does to an Irish Catholic son? And she's a single mom. We were latchkey kids. My father died when I was 5. So, you know, that was the only reason I went. I didn't want it, right? But I did go, and something happened while I was there where it went from I can't stop and I don't want to stop to I want to stop, right? And I don't know what that was. It was a magic moment, but I had to be away from it, right? I don't think it's this. I don't think it happens in your basement, you know? You know, if your kid's living in your basement with the old Van Halen poster from high school, I don't think it's going to happen there. I think you need to create some uncertainty, you know, so don't extract promises. Not because they're bad people, it's that they can't keep them. I couldn't keep them, right? Don't preach or lecture. That's like Bob, you know, the Charlie Brown talk. You ever hear the old stock in Charlie Brown? Can't hear it. When we do an intervention, I'm not trying to prove a legal case. I'm not Johnny Cochran, right? The evidence is already there. If we're in a living room and we're all talking to a sick person, the evidence is beyond a reasonable doubt that there's an issue. So we don't have to prove it to him because that's not the point of that, right? They're going to use that against me, right? Have you ever tried to argue one-on-one with an addicted person? By the end of the dinner, you're going to think it's your fault, and it's your, you know, let's go buy some drugs. You know, I mean, it's that powerful, right? So I'm not trying to prove the case. We already know. I already know. If some mother's calling me after watching this for 11 years, I know already. Now, I'm not going to sit there and say, you know, let's look at the symptoms and we need a urine and we're going to test you. And I'm not doing that. That won't work, right? That won't work. Because they're not going to say, aha, you know, all this time, you're right, you've proven it, right? Did that work in your life? I had knowledge. I knew, right? I just thought I could do it on my own. And so does all these kids, right? Or they want to get high one more time. I'm not going to do it tomorrow, I'm going to do it the next day. So extracting promises, lecturing, it's deaf ears. They can't hear it. Now, expressing expressing yourself in I statements and expressing your feelings and expressing how it's impacting you, perfectly fine, right? But when you lead off a statement with a drug addict with you, does that usually work? I hear the word "you" and my shields come up. I'm being attacked, right? And I'm looking for a reason not to go on. So don't extract promises, and don't preach or lecture. Number 8 is a really big one, and I'm sure everyone in the room can identify with it. Avoid the reactions of pity and anger, right? It's hard, right? Because when the anger stops, what's left is pity, right? How did this happen to me? Right? It's not a constructive thing. Is that common? You're angry, look what he did now, look what she did now. They're doing it again. And then when that dissipates, all that anger, and you're done feeling all that, what's left is going to be pity, and it's like a roller coaster of a nightmare. Right? I know that in my life. Codependency with a child is really hard. Does anybody know what codependency is? Really simple is if Ed is I'm codependent to Ed, and Ed has a good day, I have a good day. If Ed has a bad day, I have a bad day, right? And how many people are tied to that? Sometimes, right? And it's hard. I have a 6-year-old. I'm not trying to get into, you know, I can't feel that. You know, I can imagine what that felt like. But I do know that as a treatment provider, and I love heroin addicts. I mean, I love working with them. I love the crafty little, you know, all the conniving stuff they do. And I don't mean that to simplify this, but it's amazing to watch because it is a disease and it's very predictable, right? They repeat the same behaviors, the lying, the stealing, the manipulations, why they're different. I think the biggest killer is terminal uniqueness, right? I'm different than everybody else. But anyway, I would not trust an active heroin addict within 20 miles, unguarded, with anything I care about, right? And I don't mean that in a cold way, but it's not a dispassionate statement. Like I said, I love addicted people and I love working with them. But you really have to get with the fact that if you want to tie your emotions to that, you really got to start going Al-Anon or some of the other groups to untie that. Because to be a constructive partner in their wellness, you can't be like that. Or to the degree you are when you first start this thing. You know? So, anger and pity. It's the same feelings that a drug addict have, a codependent feel the same thing. It's a roller coaster. The emotions, it's like a right side, left side thing. The emotions of this thing is real and pain and vivid. And it takes a lot of work to slow yourself down and look at it for what it really is. I handed out a one-sheeter on, just borrow this a second. Can anyone, I'm going to ask a question. Can anyone tell me what happened on September 11th, 2001? If somebody, I know, but what happened? Can you do a couple sentences describe it? Okay, you were attacked by terrorists. Anyone else?
The world changed.
Okay, that's good. The world changed, and that it did. I'm a converted banker, by the way. I worked for Merrill Lynch. I've been in the field full time since around that time, but I was about a half mile up, you know, and I prioritized funerals like everyone else for about 2 to 3 months after that. The world changed. What else? One other person. 9/11.
We didn't feel safe anymore after that.
Okay, we didn't feel safe anymore. Okay. So what really happened on 9/11?
Violated.
No, what really happened on 9/11 is a group of 20 men hijacked a number of airplanes, plunging them into the largest office complex in the world and other targets, killing about 3,000 people. Right? That's what happened that day. But a lot of people said the world changed. I didn't feel safe anymore. All valid and all true. What is addiction? Don't read the sheet. What is addiction? Anyone? Okay. Yeah. But some people will talk about emotions and feelings. The world changed. My life changed. Addiction is a primary progressive chronic illness with genetic, psychosocial, environmental factors influencing its development and manifestations. Wow. The disease is often progressive and fatal. It is characterized by impaired control over the substance, preoccupation with the substance, and use of the substance despite adverse consequences and distortion in thinking. Right? 9/11 was a group of 20 men hijacking some airplanes. That's what addiction is. And I don't mean you can simplify it that easily, but it's an illness, and that's the definition. And the more you can move away from being codependent to that and look at it for what it really is, the more of a partner you'll be in helping treat it, right? Is that a good example? I mean, there's a lot of, you know, there's a lot of feelings that get mixed up with having your money stolen, being lied to almost daily, all the stuff that happens, and all the guilt and shame you feel because you've done the same old thing again. But put all that behind you. You know, all those feelings, all that guilt and shame will not help. So make a commitment with me tonight that You know, like counseling, we're in the here and now, and I'll look forward. Look forward, learn from the back, but don't get stuck there. The saying in AA, what do they say? 1 foot in yesterday and 1 foot in tomorrow. We are going to the bathroom on today. It's a church. You know? But it's true. The mind is a powerful thing. You know? But it's a disease. And this is how a doctor would chart it. It's got a number. Every illness has some kind of 5-digit code. Alcohol dependence, opiate addiction is 304.00. Alcoholism is 303.90, right? It's not the little bastard rotten eating. I'm not saying you don't have a right to have feelings regarding it, but you got to work on detaching from that. Does that make sense to everybody? Don't accommodate the disease. I asked that question earlier. It's the elephant in the living room. It defines everything, right? You change the locks. I see a lot of people isolate from other people, right? They don't want their friends and family to know what they're going through. So they kind of hide it and protect it, right? They stay away from their old friends that seem to have normal lives, and I don't want them to know this because I'm ashamed, right? Don't accommodate that. Live your life the best you can, right? Examples of that: locking up money and other valuables, not inviting guests for the fear the addict or alcoholic might embarrass them or might judge them, right? I don't want to be judged for the way I'm allowing this in my house, right? It's all normal. Planning your days around the alcoholic. I can't go out today because he's home. Right? How many people did that? Right? Who's going to watch him? He's 32 and living in your basement, but who's going to watch him? I don't mean it. But it's true. You have to pull it apart a little bit. You know? The last one is hard. And look, all 10 of these things are like individual goals. These are really hard to, they sound really simple, and they sound very trite coming from a guy like me, and this is what you got to do, and I'm hoping it's not coming across that way. But they're really hard. These are really hard things. And on paper, they look a little, you know, oh yeah, that makes sense, but actually doing them. So I would suggest to you, you look at all 10 of these and start trying to make a goal of them. Just one or two. Don't bite these all off. I think it's an impossible task. I mean, my friend Joe over there, I've known him, he's been in my life for 10 years.
I did the math, 7.5.
7.5, okay. I thought it was closer. Joe and his wife, I had a private practice in Westfield, New Jersey, and with another guy, and we were talking about him earlier, and Joe came to us for help because his son was arrested. And they looked at me a blank stare as I went through this stuff. I mean, there was nothing. They were like, I don't think this is, you know, this doesn't apply to me. Is that right?
That's true.
And I told them, you know, the cost of the hour was $150, but here's the thing. You're going to disregard everything I just said to you. I can tell by the look on your face. And Joe later, because I was pretty firm about it, got involved, and both he and his wife are role models in there and on. And I invited Joe here tonight because it's important that we talk about the truth. And I'd like to read it. Can I read it?
Yeah.
You going to be okay? Because I'm not going to be okay.
I'm not going to read it. Just read it. It's for the good of the classroom.
Oh boy. Star Spangled Banner of the Olympics gets me too. So I got this about a month ago. Hey Mike, it's Joe. Just wanted you to know, and I had nicknamed his son. Does anyone remember Leave It to Beaver? I had nicknamed his son. I actually named it a disorder, the Eddie Haskell disorder. He was the charming BSer that would come over, Mrs. Cleaver, don't you look lovely today, you know? And I just never bought it from day one. And I asked Joe here tonight, and he's shown a lot of courage. I just want to know that Steve, AKA Eddie H., succumbed to an overdose out in LA on Monday afternoon. He tried, Mike. I'm finding out about how many people he helped and saved. He just couldn't save himself. Your suggestion for Nancy and I to attend Naranon was a lifesaver for us. I thank you for it. Steve always wanted to do the right thing. I truly believe he took the last fix so he could put him out of his misery. He's in a better place. Mike, keep doing what you're doing because it makes a difference. And that's the reality, right? And Joe, I checked in on Joe a couple days ago, and I said, you know, I'm doing this family thing down in Thomas River, would you come? He said, let me check my schedule and talk to my boss, and there he is. So after I stopped talking, if you could all give Joe a hug and tell him how much we love Joe, but I think this is what we're about, right? And Joe did bring these principles into his life. Don't get, you know. So I think it's becoming. I think it's important. I started an outpatient in Freehold, New Jersey, and Joe was the speaker on several occasions, right? He loved it. And to watch, you know, if you're resistant about recovery, to watch Joe go from, this crap doesn't apply to me, my family's different, to become a role model on Naranon and go through all he's gone through is just something to watch. It's spectacular and it's God-given, you know, and I believe that. So, and the last one, number 10, do focus on your own life and responsibilities. You know, go out to dinner with your wife. Go out to dinner with your girlfriend. Go to a movie, right? Do things, try to get away from this. You know, it's very hard. I get that. But like I said, that exercise I gave that couple and they lasted 10 minutes. They tried again. And they kept trying. You know? And I don't know the outcome with their son. I just don't know. I don't know the end of all that. But they kept going and they kept trying to, you know, work on their own lives. And over time that helped them. So I really encourage you guys to do that. Yeah.
I think that helps the addict too, when the family's going about their life as usual. Like, when I was in my addiction, like, I would see stuff on Facebook and stuff like that, like, my brothers and sisters taking my dad out fishing on Father's Day, and, you know, all these things that they were doing, that, stuff that I was missing out on, that even in my addiction, like, that stuff deep down, like, I longed for that stuff. I wanted to be part of the family again, and stuff like that. Whereas if they were all just miserable because I was making them miserable, I wouldn't have had that family unit to look forward to getting back to.
I mean, I can remember an interaction I did with a mutual friend of Mark and I. The girl, it was an invite model. I don't know if you've ever, you know, there's a difference. There's the surprise model, the Johnson model, where, you know, and that's an old model to some degree. I use it when it's needed for that purpose, but I also like to invite, as scary as that sounds, the addicted person into the family meeting. Done carefully, it's actually very effective. It's less confrontational, less stress on the family, way less stress on the interventionist. And so, but I remember we invited a young gal, and I'll come downstairs, but I'm not listening to any of you. All right, good, just come, you know. And she's in the kitchen, so she gets up, you know, 5 minutes into it, goes into the kitchen, and she's banging pots, you know. And the father couldn't contain himself to get up and appease. She's 24, the baby with the rattle. And I said, we're having our meeting whatever she does, right? She can sit there banging pots, but you are not getting up. We're going to talk about what we need to do to get better. And she can listen. But if she doesn't sit here, that doesn't matter. Because really the process of intervention is you guys, right? If the family starts changing the rules, right, like you said, then it can be as simple as we're going to start living our lives again. You know, you're not just going to dictate everything we do. Right? We're gonna go to the movies. What? You haven't gone to the movies in years. You know what I mean? That's simple stuff, right? I mean, it's really that simple. But I can still picture that girl went into long-term treatment. You know, I'm not saying it's because of that, but they didn't appease it and didn't react to it, you know? So, you know, we do a lot of interventions where we invite the person, and sometimes they don't come to the first meeting. But we call them up and tell them about the new rules, the new boundaries. We tell them the life as they know it is changing. Not to hurt them, but to support a recovery they're not ready to engage in yet, right? So, again, these top 10 things, as this said, each of these suggestions should be approached separately and as individualized goals. Has anybody done, I mean, yeah, obviously some of you have gone to meetings and learn about the addiction. Does some of the other ones, can someone share about their experience, anybody? It's okay. We'll wait for the small group. Does anybody have questions about these? Yeah, Mark.
Could you, where you mentioned that, like, sometimes, if there's phone rings or something, that the intervention, like if the person refuses to go, how do you continue to work with the family?
Yes.
And what's kind of the follow-up to some of that? Because I think you're right that it really, like getting down to yes or no really scares a lot of people. In fact, a lot of people don't even want to do it because they're scared of that consequence. Now, in my experience, over 90% of the time, they end up going to treatment.
It's true.
Sometimes the first no might be at 10 o'clock in the morning and the yes is at 2 in the afternoon. So,
Or the 2 days. Sometimes it takes that long.
could you kind of go over some of those things that, so people understand, like, when if the addict or alcoholic refuses, what are some of the things that they have?
Well, I mean, you know, change a lot of things. The one thing we generally don't, you know, the support financially, a lot of, you know, right away, some people are paying for the car insurance or something to do with their everyday life. The only thing we generally don't, from a financial perspective, advise people to turn off is the phone sometimes, just for the communication, right? But everything else, you know, probably should go, right? Also, the only contact we generally suggest people have, once they've asked them and they've said no, and you have a guy like me that goes back and forth and plays tennis in the living room for a while, and could be hours. I've spent 10 hours in the living room. I've done interventions behind, either locked in the bathroom for 6 hours. But, you know, once you've come to the point where they've chosen to either leave the house or do something, the only communication would be, we suggest, and this is what Jonathan and I do, is that the only communication they have whatsoever is about treatment, right? It's the only thing. I love you, go to treatment, right? We're not looking to punish anyone. I love you, go to treatment. That's the only answer. I need $10. I love you, go to treatment, right? I mean, everything else changes. That's what we do. I mean, and again, the only thing financially we don't cut off, regardless, how will we get to work? How will we do this? You know, I hear everything, you know, is the phone, so we can keep an open line of communication, right? But I generally have families text or call almost daily with that simple message. I love you, go to treatment. Nothing more, nothing less, right? And we lead, and again, when we go back to, you know, sparring with them and doing an intellectual, like, legal case with them in the living room over, well, let's prove you're an addict. That's not going to work. You know, our simple answers are, when family members, the only thing we tell them to say is, I love you, get help, right? I love you to get, why get into the argument? It's going to be a disaster, right? We simplify everything, right? We're not getting into a debate. I don't think interventions can be very therapeutic for a family, but that's not the purpose. What's the purpose of an intervention? The only purpose? That's right. and move the family simultaneously towards the values of Al-Anon or some of their family support groups, right? So that when he calls, I've had people, what if he calls me from treatment? Don't answer the phone, right? They can leave a voicemail and then you don't have to respond. So, does that answer? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the other part of that, and I assume that you would do a job and do that, is that it's very important, many of the interventionists will then act as case managers so that
Yeah.
they'll work with the treatment centers while they're in there, they'll help the families and the treatment centers, and then also help with discharge planning and things like that, so that they're not just kind of running home after 3 weeks in a treatment center and support the family. Could you talk about
Yeah,
that?
this is a hard thing for a lot of people, but I believe if your child is over 20 and we send them off to treatment, I don't think they should re-enter your home ever. That just fell on deaf ears, I'm sure of that. I think that you should use the system in place, supportive housing. 30 days is a good beginning, right? But I think, there's kids fighting over in the Middle East for us that are like 18, 19 years old. And these kids are 20, 21, I know they act like they're 10. But if they don't man up and become a mature adult, they're not going to get better. And I don't think that happens in a lot of families in mom's house very often. They go, the change back to that enabling system happens pretty quickly, right? Hasn't that been your experience, Mark? So I know, I have to gauge mom very well before I say that to them. But I think if you have a successful intervention, you get them out of the house, you should not bring them home if they shouldn't belong there anymore. I don't think, families are very good at providing long-term treatment. Yeah, Joe.
I firmly believe that an addict really does want help. They just can't get there. Totally believe that.
I agree with that.
But their mind is, it's all rewired. I have a friend in the group up in Union County. He always says that addicts don't become addicts overnight. It's a slow crescendo, as they say. And it probably takes them a good 18 months to get all the rewiring in their brains back. So I have a neighbor down here who he knows about addiction as well in his life. And I was telling him this story. I mean, my son, when he was in and out of like a billion rehabs, and I was telling this neighbor, and I said, yeah, this guy, he's a dentist, and he says, he really should be put away for 18 months. And he's an old salt. He's a sea captain and all that stuff. And he goes, so you know what they should do? They should throw everybody in jail for 2 years and they'll get better. Because they can't get drugs. I'm going, oh man, wow. But my son would go down to rehab, he'd come home, and he'd relapse. He'd go down to rehab. And it was actually a point in time where he said, I can't do this anymore, and he started living, he lived 18 months in a halfway house. He actually became an assistant manager of a halfway house, and he was on probation. But because he became the assistant manager, the irony was that he was administrating drug tests while he was giving his own drug tests, and he was doing it. So he got into it, and he needed that support because he couldn't come back, as I call it, the scene of the crime, wherever it was. He needed the support of fellow addicts to pick him up by the scruff of the neck and say, go to a meeting, go here, go to... That's what he needed. It lasted for a couple of years. But he felt very, very good about having the protectionism of that halfway house and addicts around him to help him. It's when he ventured out, he spread his wings and he started getting a job and making money, and then he just sort of floated. And that's when things got bad. Every time when he got a little bit of freedom and he fell, and he'd have to start all over again. I firmly believe that he needed and he wanted the support of addicts around him to help him. And if you could have done it for more than 18 months, I think maybe it would have.
I agree with that. Any questions? This is tough stuff, you know? I don't minimize that. You know, I don't minimize that. This is really hard stuff. Mark, anything you?
You did a good job, Mike. Thank you.